I'm joined by Barbara Arntz today of Telenet, and Barbara is a transformation leader and lifelong learner with a career spanning a couple of decades across business and academic worlds. Barbara is passionate about making organizations more adaptive, effective, and meaningful places to work. And today she's going to be talking to us about rewiring the telco operational model. Barbara has advised, we'll take questions during her talk at appropriate points. So if you have a question, please do put it in the chat and I will monitor that and draw that to Barbara's attention as we go. But we'll also take questions at the end. Perfect. So a warm welcome, Barbara, and to everyone who's joining us today. Over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Anne, for the very warm introduction and for inviting me to share the Telenet story. So indeed, my name is Barbara Arntz, and I'm a VP Transformation at Telenet back in Belgium. And I'm super excited about the Telenet story because it's a multi-year journey that we started sharing already a few years ago at the Enterprise Tech Leadership Summit. And the story has continued to evolve over the last few years. So what I aim to do in the next 30 minutes or so is talk you through the different stages of our learning journey, but really focusing on the leadership mindset shifts that underpin it. And also how we used quite a few of the principles from Safer, Sooner, Happier to help our organization navigate those. So let's dive into it. But before that, maybe just a few words on Telenet. You may not be familiar with this company. So Telenet is a Belgian telco player. We're one of the largest ones in the country and part of the Liberty Global Group. We have, I think, over 3,500 employees, 3 million customers, and serve them with a mix of media, fixed, and mobile brands and offers. And I think what makes our company and our culture unique is that we're very purpose-oriented and also very, very customer proposition driven. I really put a lot of emphasis in that. But that's a few words on Telenet and who Telenet is. But our journey. So Telenet is a company who I think has been around for 25 years, probably 30 by now. But in 2018, we had a big, an important moment in terms of our operating model. That we decided that we needed to transform if the company was going to be successful and alive post 2020. Back in 2018, like many companies, we were organized in a traditional way, operating in a waterfall model and with a very siloed organization. And back then, and as some of you I'm sure will recall, the Spotify model was very much in vogue. And Telenet was one of the companies that jumped on that model. And we really started applying a lot of those agile ways of thinking and practices, management practices that underpin it. But 2 years into that journey, and that's going to be the bulk of the talk today, we ran into the limitations of that model and realized that there were some structural things that we'd failed to tackle just by implementing Spotify. And then really did a reset into what we now refer to as our Agile 2.0 model, where we shifted to a more outcome-based and product-based org model. And I'll walk us through how that went. But with part by maybe focusing just on the Spotify model that we implemented, and in 2018, we after a series of pilots, we went live with it. But in a nutshell, at 3 years into the journey of having this, having applied these principles company wide, we realized we got tangled up. We'd copied Spotify and with tribes and the squads and the chapters onto what was essentially still a very traditional and functional organization. And we really hit the limits of that, quite intensely, with a lot of teams being super dependent on other teams to be able to deliver anything, and leading to, I would say, a lot of frustration with a lot of our workforce, that agility felt far off. Another realization we had at the time, and I think this is really important, that if you look at an org design, it should be a nested structure, meaning that a team, a unit, a domain, and the enterprise level way of thinking, they should all match and be congruent. That's the ideal picture. But what we realized in what we were doing with the Spotify model, was that we'd implemented the Spotify structure at the team level, but our enterprise level structure, simply wasn't matching that. And so when we, in 2022, when we started to think about our Agile 2.0 model, we realized that if we were going to fix the team level agility by reorganizing the squads and applying team level practices, it wasn't going to cut it. And we really needed to start at the enterprise level and make sure that the whole structure of the company would also support the team level agility. And if not, our fear was, if we didn't do that, we would run into the same problems that we had with the Spotify model. So how did we start on that enterprise level agility journey? Well, a good place to start, I think that's for any transformation or any ambition that you have with your operating model, is to start from your strategy, and that helps you answer the question, what do we want to achieve with our operating model? And for Telenet, and I mentioned it very briefly in the introduction, but the heartbeat of the company is very much around the customer and the customer experience. And our catchphrase, in fact, is determined to deliver and delight. And that requires us and everything that we do to be really laser focused on meeting and exceeding different customer promises. And so when we looked at how we should redesign the operating model, we put this at the center of that exercise. So customer centricity, and this was a trade-off. It could have been, for many other telcos, the outcomes that they wanted to achieve would be different, and it could have been cost or product innovation or international expansion. But for us, it was really this customer centricity that was at the heart of it. And so taking that in mind, we then started literally from a blank page and said, let's start to think of the building blocks for an Agile 2.0 model at the enterprise level. And that exercise resulted us in defining 3 generic building blocks of what we call in Telenet language the tribes. And a tribe is a VP level domain of responsibility. So a tribe leader would report directly to a C-suite, so to a CIO or CSO. And they typically, for the most part, they have around 10 to 15 teams within that domain. So anything 100, 200 people who also hierarchically report into that tribe. So they're big big entities, and they're the main building blocks of our OPMO. And the first building block is the ones that you see here colored in yellow, and that we call the customer or the customer product tribes. And they are, and we'll see more on that later, but they're really important in the operating model. And they're the tribe leads of these tribes are accountable for a clear set of customer outputs, but they're also empowered with all the means to be successful and to deliver on those outputs. And customer output, just to give you an example, in our telco context, could be something commercial, like a tribe who's responsible for defining the sales offer, or more experience-based, like say the tribe responsible for the monthly billing cycle. And so these tribes are relatively, or as much as possible, they're designed to be autonomous. So we used techniques like domain-driven design to ensure that we minimize the interdependencies between those tribes. So that's building block number one in the model. A second building block is what we call the platform tribes, and they're similar in size. They also have all of the means to be successful, including people, IT, for example. But their mission is different. These tribes are organized to design, build, and manage a common platform, or offer a corporate service, say finance or legal, to the rest of the organization. So they are built not for end customer outputs, but really for scale and efficiency. So that's building block number two. And building block number three, and I'll zoom in on these later in a bit more detail, but they're what we call the enterprise tribes. And again, they have a different mission. And they own the operating model architecture, and they're also accountable for driving collaboration and setting priorities across the company. And they kind of act like the glue between the more loosely coupled and autonomous yellow and blue tribes. And it's our belief that by their sheer design, as being focused on customer outputs, being as autonomous as possible, but still having somebody in the system responsible for defining guardrails and orchestrating at the drumbeat, that we would take away some of the frictions on the picture that I started with a lot of the intertwined teams across the company who were just not being very agile. So that's the idea behind this model. And for those of you who are familiar with a team topologies way of looking at teams and organizations, this is one way of picturing it. So you see here the big blocks. They are the tribes, again in the different colors because they have a different role to play. But each of these tribes would then break out into a different set of teams, and that can be anywhere, as I mentioned, between 10 to 15 teams for the large tribes, a few less ones for the smaller tribes. So that's a little bit the idea of the model that we put in place to tackle the constraints we had with the Spotify model. And that's a little bit the theory behind that. But then we translated that into an org chart that in our company went live in 2023. And that's the picture that you see here. So we have our CEO and six members of the C-suite. They are circle leads who report to him. And all of them have anything between five to 8 tribes then reporting into them. And I won't go into the org chart in detail. That wouldn't be interesting. But I think a few things that are interesting about this picture and just worth calling out. is first the accountability for the customer outputs is spread around the company. And so with the exception of the finance circle, everybody has real accountability for some parts of the customer revenue streams, and as clear outputs that they can be accountable for. A second interesting thing is that there's no traditional IT department anymore or a CIO anymore. And in fact, all of these the yellow tribes that you see here, they all do some sort of software development. The billing tribe on this picture will own the billing application. And the product tribe will own some of the products and the mobile apps that we have for our customers. And so software development it takes place in a federated way. In probably half of these tribes have some form of software development. But of course, there are some blue platform tribes who provide common infrastructure or who set the guardrails in terms of how we develop software. And last thing maybe worth pointing out, the pink tribes here, the enterprise tribes. Remember I said those are the people responsible and accountable in the company for defining the operating model architecture, but also orchestrating the drumbeat across the company and setting priorities. So my tribe, you can't read it very well, but is the agility and transformation tribe. So accountable for defining all of the agile ways of working, but also the agile tooling, and coordinating all of the company-wide ceremonies such as the portfolio QBR and BRPs, etc. Another example is the people tribe, which would traditionally be the HR function. So everybody in the company, so all 3,500 of our employees have their home in one of these tribes, and with a clear, differentiated role to play, and with the thought that went behind it in designing and in scoping them with less or as few as possible interdependencies between them. So that's a little bit the first part of my story. Shall I pause for questions? I might just see if I do that. Is there?
Please do. I haven't noticed any questions so far in the chat. Does anyone
No?
have anything they'd like to ask at this point?
If not, I'll. Can you sit? I see a question. Can you sit in more than one tribe? So no, it's a hierarchical structure. So everybody reports into a team, which reports into a tribe. So everybody firmly has their home in one of the tribes. But of course, it doesn't mean to say that you spend all of your time working within that tribe and within that team. So, for example, my tribe, the agility and transformation tribe, and we have a lot of the agile coaches and, for example, who operate company-wide and transformation experts. So they travel and spend their time working with the rest of the company. And the same would go for the business controllers, for example. But home base is within one tribe. Yeah. I'll go back to my screen. And maybe share, if that's okay, I'll share a few of the challenges that we had in terms of getting the leadership to adopt this more outcome-based model. And I think that's worth talking through. And then I'll end up with, or wrap up with just a few learnings from the journey. But the paradigm shifts, and the analogy I'll use here is one, of icebergs, where when the structure went live, and the enterprise tribes were responsible for having designed it, and for implementing it, and driving the model throughout the organization. We thought we would have fixed a lot of things with the with the outcome based model, and with the simplified structure, and way of looking at the company. I think what was interesting, and what we learned over the last 2 years as well, is that lying underneath that, there's a lot of other challenges, and beliefs, and behaviors, and interrelationships that also need to shift, and that take more time than simply, of course, changing the structure. So we went through that in the last year as well, and I think our leadership, and not only the C-suite or the tribe leads, but all of the leaders in the company, had to go through some kind of mindset and leadership shift, to be able to work successfully in the new model. And I'll just flash for each one just a few, just to give us an idea of what they were. And let's start with the customer tribes, who remember, we reoriented all of our business towards the customer, and empowered all of the customer tribe leads and the teams within those tribes to take end-to-end and lifetime ownership of whatever the products were within their tribe. So they almost acted as a micro enterprise, or leader, managing the different life cycles of whatever was in the scope of their tribe. So that means innovation, change, but also managing the BAU. And the big shift that this entailed for our leadership is that you had to go from in a more siloed and functional organization, where you're more focused on certainty and on delivery, shifting to a lifetime and a product ownership mindset. And that entailed being more flexible with managing the different those different priorities, and taking calls that balances the short and the long term, but also spending enough mind space and attention on the more boring BAU stuff around the billing, for example, and not just coming up with shiny new projects that happens to fit your scope before. And that's really this lifetime ownership, and really understanding how you make those trade-offs, and translating that into a story for the teams. I think was really important, and takes a while to absorb. The platform tribes, they also had they were also operating in a very different way than they were before. And remember, I said in our model we didn't have a traditional IT department anymore, and software development technology is federated across the company in the model now. That doesn't mean to say that there's no more platform tribes, and we do have we had a lot of them. I remember I think we have around 20 of these blue platform tribes, but they offer a service that all of the other tribes in the company and need to consume. And this was a little bit of a mindset shift on both sides. On the business side, they were traditionally more used to pushing requirements over the wall, and then expecting it to be fixed. to now consuming a service and that balances the scale and the needs for everybody in the company. But equally, for our platform teams and the way that they interacted with the business, they also had to make a mindset shift to becoming more internal customer oriented and driving things like adoption, minding the different stakeholder priorities and navigating around that. Third, three and a half, two more, four in total. A third shift was with this idea of the enterprise tribes. We have four of them in the model, who drive collaboration and alignment. And again, the idea was quite intuitive. So we have autonomous tribes as much as possible, and they deliver their own roadmaps and they set their own priorities. But we also expect them to co-create in strategic sandbox for bigger initiatives. And that's co-creation amongst the different teams, and doing that company-wide and not just within the department that you used to operate in, again, was a paradigm shift, and moving away from a world where you're used to securing budgets and managing resources, to one where you're successful when you partner with the right teams on collective missions that contributes to the company-wide goals. And again, that's was quite different to how we viewed success or steered in the older model. And last but not least, the operating model system. And I think this is something that our organization wasn't used to. We used to think of an operating model or an org chart a little bit in boxes and boxes and lines. And very Dilbert-like almost. It's something that you tolerated, but never. A lot of leaders didn't really see it as their role to operate in that system, but also to play a leading role in architecting it. And that was again a big mindset shift for the organization, that to be a leader and to lead a tribe in a company like ours, of course you need to be focused on your business results and driving those. But you also need to be mindful and pay attention to, are my teams wired for flow? Is there anything holding them back that I can help reduce, or should we as a company rethink some of the guardrails and principles that we have in place? And that accountability for our leaders, I think, are really elevated over the last years as we're operating in our 2.0 model. So that was a little bit reflection, just to give you a little bit of a flavor of some of the more deeper beliefs and mindset shifts that our organization went through in the last year. And maybe to end up with or to wrap up the story, a few learnings that we had as a transformation team to help Telenet through this journey on the last year. And to start with, what can we do and what role can we play? And it's hearing the story like this, and I think for many companies, when you start on it, it can be it can feel very daunting. But luckily, and I think all of you in this call are very aware of that, there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of best practices out there, and a lot of companies, and it's I think this community is also a testimony to that. but struggle with similar challenges. So I think that's super fortunate, and it's important that we continue to share those learnings. And I think the outcome based principles that underpin the sooner, safer, happier way of viewing operating models have also been very, very important with the Telenet story. And I'll just illustrate three of them to give you some examples of how we tackle that. A first one is around the theme of simplification, and I think, or I hope you'll appreciate that with the org model and the building the modular building blocks of the tribes and the really clear articulation of the role that they have to play is a good starting point. But getting everybody and all of our 3,500 employees and our partners and everybody in the company to adopt and to understand that mental model really requires a conscious effort and continuous repetition and re-explanation and keeping those things constant. So simplifying but imprinting it, and I think don't underestimate that for two reasons. One is that not everybody in your company will think in patterns. Explaining the concept of the modularity and of the different roles to play and how that all ties together. It requires a conscious effort, but it also requires a role of an enterprise tribe, a type of team who is accountable for making sure that the model doesn't get more complex, and that not different different types of things creep or complexity keeps in. Simplicity, I think it's super important and fantastic. But it also requires conscious effort to keep things simple, because if not, you'll risk things becoming more complex fast again. So that's one. Two, and I think this one is also really important, is slowing things down for the organization as they go through the change. And the principles of managing cognitive load and delivering things or limiting the size of things that you release, that equally applies to the context of transformation. So as we went through the journey in the last year and a half, we've been very conscious about that as a team. Working in logical sequences, allowing teams to pause at different milestones, and just having time and mind space to adopt new practices and new mindsets. But also from our side, really deliberately pacing the learning, and making sure that when a team is in and not focused on winning the business race, but making time for their pit stop, that we make it easy for them, and we create the right time and conditions so that the change can be adopted. And something that we learned as well with our leadership is really making time for that. So in all of our tribe backlogs, we've now foreseen explicit capacity, and not only for building new business initiatives or managing the BAU, but explicit time for the teams to adopt and to fine tune their own way of working. And a last one, last learning is very much around amplifying the right messages. And this is a picture of our CEO with one of our walls in our HQ. But the importance of the leadership being behind this, and being comfortable with defining an outcome, and leaving the autonomy and the leeway at the different teams of how to get there, cannot be underestimated, or understated. And that requires a less deterministic and a less programmatic way of going about this, and one where, and this is an example of that, but where we call out, celebrate success stories, and new behaviors, to continuously bring this to mind. But then my last slide on this is now, it's a picture of our teams, one of the teams that we worked with recently in our company. But is now everything crystal clear, and do we have no loose ends with all of our teams wired for flow? And of course, the answer is no. We're not 100% there yet. But I think the super important message for our company is no. But we've got this under control. We got this. We're a lot less naive. On what it takes to drive such a transformation than we were when we started with Spotify. And we've learned to co-create with the business, also on things operating model, and that's super important. And we're now at a version 2.1. We will over the next months go to a 2. We're at 2.0 at the moment, sorry, and we will continue to fine tune and to inspect and adapt the different building blocks of the operating model. And we have a series of enterprise tribes like the Agility and Transformation tribe, who are really committed to working together and who have skin in the game, to continuously improve the system. And I think that's super important to have that in place. And I will pause there, and see if there's any questions from the group before maybe saying some final words.
Thank you, Barbara. We do have some questions in the chat. I think we have one from Dan. Dan, would you like to come in?
Hi, yeah, thank you, Barbara. That was really interesting. I'm from Tesco Mobile in the UK, and we've just been on a very similar journey, or are currently on a very similar journey to you. I had a question about adjacent technology transformation with this, and I wonder, did you already have a decentralized architecture when you went into this, or is that something you've had to build alongside?
No, excellent question. So when we started applying the domain-driven design to scope the different tribes, we tried as much as possible to decentralize what we could. But we quickly ran into the limits of that, and we had a complex legacy architecture at Telenet as well. So we created several of the blue platform tribes, whose mission it was to explicitly to continue to modularize whatever the scope was of their platform. And so we actually have one tribe less than we had when we started, because that's been completed successfully. But that constraint is a little bit baked into the model. And so what is a platform? What started as a common platform can evolve as the IT modernization or re-architecting takes place to a more decentralized and federated model.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely does. Thank you. Really interesting.
And also because we felt if we had to wait for that perfect architecture, we'd never draw an operating model. There's always a next initiative to tackle.
Yeah, Interesting. Thank you, Barbara. And Dan, we have a question from Joe in the chat. Joe, if you're still here, would you like to come in and ask your question?
Did you lose people? Is that the question? Did everybody make it?
Sorry, yeah, that was just one I've just put in. We're really trying really hard to implement some change and struggling through really established ways of working.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's. I think I for sure recognize that. So our journey, and we started with the very first agile boot camps in 2018. So that's 7 years ago. So it's so it takes time. I think that for sure. I think what we learned is two things on getting each of the teams to get on board the vision and the operating model and what we have behind it. Is one, it's probably not for everybody. I think working in an outcome-based model where you take a lot of accountability, and frankly, that also means taking risks or having to make difficult calls, and being comfortable with having to partner and collaborate. And if you're wired very differently, or if your view of how how you view your work, then it could be that it's not the right fit. And we've had some examples of that, and people who have left the company. So I think having the right that right fit is important. But two, and that's a bit more on the on the way of implementing it, is when we moved to Spotify, I think we expected that we would turn a switch, and the very next day everybody would be operating in agile and then being in a squad and delivering things at lightning speed. I think now we really conscious about the steps and the changes, and we're dosing them in a lot more thoughtful way, because the capacity for teams to absorb change is also is super limited, and we need to be very mindful of that. So we've paced it a lot more than I think that we had when we had the first Spotify training in 2019.
Yeah, I don't think we're any different from any other organisation, to be fair. I think we all talk the talk, but it's walking the walk that's really hard. And it's hard to make sure everyone's walking in the same direction. So I think what you were talking about there, I just made some notes on it, having that, what is our vision? What is our operating model? It's like the bare basics to have, everyone bought into. And, we've had some changes with our leadership team as well, which doesn't help, because then it's,
then they have to be on board of the operating model, and they have to buy in. And I think the picture I had of our CEO as well, and I think we've been fortunate. He's been there from the start, back in 2018, and that continuity and that firm belief has really been instrumental, I think, in this. So that's I think that's helpful if you have that, for sure.
Yes, lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Barbara. We do have a couple more questions in the chat. We've got one from Tom. Tom, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Barbara, what I'd like is some information about the results, and not only that, but the results in relation to the costs through time, the profitability. Is there any measure of productivity or profitability or anything else that is the result of this?
Yeah, I think excellent question, and it's I think two or maybe three answers on that. One, it's and I know this also from my academic interests. It's notoriously difficult to isolate. Our market has changed massively. We've re-platformed. We've had a new entrant in the market. So to isolate the different effects, I think that's a little bit of a disclaimer. But what we look for is the outcomes from an operating model perspective, and things like do our employees feel that they have less impediments to doing their work? Do they in our quarterly surveys? So we track those results and use those actively. Second is we've had some big product launches that really require an effort from many areas of the company. And if we were to do this in the old system, would have taken a lot longer, and then we have them, and then we're able to do it in the new model. So that's maybe, I think, two illustrations of how we see it's helping us. And I think the litmus test is the employees, of course.
Could you tell me the results of your surveys about how people felt that there were less inhibitors?
Yeah, so it's a measure that we track team by team, and use it not as a metric per se, but I think also, and that was a little bit the mindset shift that I meant, where all of our leaders should be accountable for removing impediments within their team. So it's a dialogue within the team that leads the team to defining actions, how they can reduce frictions, and that feeds back to us as the enterprise tribes, where we change some things at the system level. So I think that the value even and the metrics have gone up over the last years. But I think the value is also what do you do and what's the dialogue that you're having around this. And I think that's more important than the metric per se. But I'm also happy that it's going up.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we had another question following Tom's question, which was kind of along similar lines, from Amani. Amani, would you like to come in with your question if it's not already been answered? I think possibly hasn't. Go on.
Yes, thank you for that. Barbara, thank you. Excellent job. Thank you for taking the time to share your journey with the community. Tom did sort of ask, I was just after specific metrics that help you to track before you started the transformation, or like 2.0, and where you are right now, and how do you sort of socialize or normalize that with leadership and the organization? Ultimately, I believe as change facilitators, we want to mobilize people, inspire them, and ultimately change the behavior and the culture, right? So I was just wondering around any specific metrics that you're tracking. And also, can I just ask a follow-up as well? In an ever-changing market conditions and economy, what have you done to try and keep your agile coaches at bay and not get rid of them like everybody else in our industry is doing? Thank you.
Yeah. So metrics, I think, we have quite an extensive survey. So we have an active culture of asking feedback to our employees. And I'm also a firm believer that you need data. If you're doing a transformation of this kind, it really helps to have the data at different levels to also communicate to your leadership about where the transformation is going. I think the ones that we found most useful are twofold. One is the the employees and how they and their experience on different fronts, and for teams who are there working to deliver customer outputs, it's really, do they see inhibitors impeding their work? Do they have barriers? Do they feel that they have a say on the outcome of their team? So it's metrics around that that track their autonomy and their ability to achieve the outcomes. Two, a second set of metrics that we found extremely helpful is everything is for a lot of our teams, software and delivering software is super important because it's part of the digital and the data driven customer experience that we have. So the DORA metrics, which I think many of you will be familiar with, are fantastic. I think they're because they're also allow us to be benchmarked, and they track the right things. There's a lot of thought being put behind them, and so we're trying to build up the storytelling around that as well. So I think two, where one is more on the employee side and more on the outcomes. The DORA metrics go a long way in that. Your second question was around the agile coaches, where I think we've also gone through waves, and I think many companies have. And what I've done, and I now have the agile coaches in my team. I think two things is, one, they're there to help the other the business tribes or the platform tribes achieve certain set of outcomes, but we're a lot more transparent on that. So it's a bit when I mentioned it, the base camps, or so we try to, or we don't try, but we make sure that they agree what they will be focusing on, what they will help the business achieve, whether it's faster or what type of improvement topics they're working on. And two, and I think that's an important one for the agile coach community as well, is people come from different agile frameworks. And you have Spotify, which is where we started with, but there's a million, well, maybe not a million, but there's a lot more out there. What we've done now is we have a Telenet scaled agile framework, and all of the coaches really work from that framework. So we don't get the problem that we faced before, and that's where I think the business, and I think they were right, we're also a bit fed up with us, is we have people implementing conflicting things, or doing things in silos and with their own flavor, and then we weren't helping the system. And I think now by doing that, linking it a lot tighter to one model, I think helps and makes the case better. Yeah.
Thank you, Amani. Thank you, Barbara. That was really interesting. Yeah, I wondered about that, about whether you had a consistent approach across your organization. And yeah, it sounds like you do, and that you're seeing benefits from doing that. We have a cheeky question from Tom that's just popped up in the chat. Tom, would you like to come in again?
Oh, I just meant that as cheeky question, following up my previous one, so don't take it too seriously. But it'd be a good question every meetup you have, right? In principle. Thank you.
Sure. Oh, thank you.
And what's the question? Or I'm not seeing the chat. Sorry, apologies.
Thomas,
sorry. I'll do it. Yeah, I just said, how much sooner, how much safer, how much happier. And I'm just having a little bit of fun. You did a good attempt at answering my previous question, so that's fine.
Yeah, I think it's my answer would be there's always more that you can do, and it's not a fixed end goal, and we're now, I think we're higher on the but we can always go faster, we can always go happier, and the context continues to change. We now have AI coming into our operating model as well, that will require a 3.0. And so all of these things will change again. So I think it's constantly, evaluating and setting the bar, and seeing which teams will go faster, rather than setting a prescriptive DORA target or a happiness target for each team. I think the value lies more in the dialogue and in the way that we stretch not only our business results, but we also stretch our operating model, and set the bar there.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Thanks again, Tom. We have Amani with your hand up.
Yeah, just one last thing, if I may, and it's just a comment, really. Barbara, I just wanted to comment, and I forgot to say it. What I particularly like about, I guess, the second iteration of your transformation is where the senior leadership, the C-suite, recognize the need for them to change as well, to change something in how they're operating. Most of the time, as change facilitators, again, we're invited to go and fix specific teams, as in go fix team X because they're not working, they're not delivering fast enough, or this or that. So I really like that they got involved, they got their hands dirty, and they recognize the opportunity. Like, if we're going to make this work company-wide, it's got to go both ways.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. It's a little bit the dolls picture I had all the way at the beginning. If you're only fixing the teams, but if your enterprise layer and your C-suite is still in a functional mindset, then you'll end up in trouble again. So so that's a good reflection. I would agree.
Yeah, great. Yeah, great reflection. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we are pretty much at time, just approaching 6:30. So I think at this point we need to say thank you so much, Barbara, for a really excellent session. Fascinating. Lots that we can learn from. And thank you to everyone who's participated as well, and for your excellent questions. Oh, you're very welcome, Mix and Joe and everyone. Great to know we've got somebody even down in Australia. Amazing. So, yeah, thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you again. We'll be back again in a month's time, second Tuesday of the month. At the moment, we're planning an open space, but yeah, we shall see. That's based on feedback from the community. We know that you enjoy open spaces.
Super. Well, thank you, everybody. And have a good evening or day for those of you who are still on an earlier time zone.
Oh, thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you, and everyone.